Great, thank you. So just all go down very quickly, introduce yourselves. I'm Nate Whigham, running a capital or capital advisory firm, primarily focused on commercial real estate, very active in the cannabis space for a couple of years.
Alec Burkin, Abacus Health Products. Abacus Health Products is a dermatological pharmaceutical company that specializes in making cannabinoid products for specific medical indications. So we have a very differentiated regulatory strategy as it relates to the rest of the cannabis industry, essentially. We make drugs specifically for specific medical indications, whether that be acne or eczema or pain relief, leveraging what are called active pharmaceutical ingredients, and we distribute those products in big box retailers like CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Bed Bath & Beyond. Today the company is in about 20,000 points of sale across 2 brands, one sold through healthcare practitioners, and we define that as chiropractors, acupuncturists, physical therapists, and massage therapists. And then we have a direct-to-consumer brand that is sold in big box retail, as I mentioned. So we're going to get very deep into those individual topics today, and we just appreciate the opportunity to be here with everyone.
Hello, my name is Laura Eisman. I am co-founder of a new brand called Highness. And it's a brand focused on women. We create products specifically for women. It came about because in the emerging cannabis industry, we felt that there wasn't a brand that was speaking to women and entering their lifestyle. And so we took this white opportunity to create products that are not only beneficial to women, but speak to them in a way and enter their lives. We start with their lifestyles and we develop products that actually fit into the way that they live their lives. So every product has a certain aesthetic to it. It looks more like a beauty brand. It's distinguished from all the other brands on the market at the moment. And I'm looking forward to telling you more about it. Thank you.
I'm Jeff Friedland. I'm based out of Denver. I see a lot of faces I know from past years here, but I've been in various aspects of the cannabis industry going back to 2013 as an owner of 2 retail stores in Colorado and a grow facility, and then early investor in 3 Canadian startups that intended to become licensed in Canada early on, and all 3 became public and got licensed, and then got involved because Israel was at the center of cannabinoid research in 2 Israeli companies. One that was, and still is, was funded here out of New York, but on the plant genetics side, and the other one focused on preclinical work at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. As it relates to this event today, I did write a book, Marijuana, the World's Most Misunderstood Plant, back in 2015. I did have my book launch here in New York, and it's on Amazon and print and Kindle. I'm glad to send anybody here a free copy if you give me my postal address. So I'm not pitching, selling anything, but I'm offering free copies. And I just need postal addresses. And my recent activity for the last 18 months or so has really been on working with consumer packaged goods companies regarding strategies for hemp seed oil, and or CBD.
Great, so I'm definitely going to send you my address. So when we think about cannabis products, there's obviously 2 very large subcategories, right? There's the CBD products and then there's the THC side of it. So I think a good way to start the conversation would be just go down and just kind of quickly address what do you think in the long run really is the bigger market opportunity?
Sure. I think I would challenge you, Nathan. I don't think it's CBD, THC. I think you have psychoactive and non-psychoactive because we have a number of microcannabinoids such as CBG, CBN, CBC that are likely going to be, I believe, actually even larger markets than CBD will be, although at this point they're still misunderstood both by the scientific community as well as certainly the general consumer. So I like to think about it as psychoactive, non-psychoactive. I'm in the CBD business, so I'm partial and certainly a bit biased. Certainly in the near term, I believe CBD presents a really nice opportunity both from consumers as well as the investment perspective, just because of the liberalization of the regulatory community. As I mentioned, our product's completely legal in all 50 states for free sale, interstate commerce, already on shelf in big box retail. We are able to start to build the first cannabis brand. We recently signed on Rob Gronkowski as a spokesperson, and we are really doing everything we can to establish ourselves as that household name, to take some of the market share away from large CPG companies that Jeffrey apparently is speaking with, trying to really show individuals that in retail pharmacy, there are other options. There's a lot of dissatisfaction with current products, whether it's an Icy Hot, a Bengay when you're talking about pain relief, or Proactive or Aveeno when you're talking about acne. So we are just seeing the introduction of CBD into these specific, what are called planograms in retail shelving, so that they're really in the correct aisle, because as consumers, we walk into a retail pharmacy, we are conditioned to shop by the overhead signs. If we want an acne product, we walk to the acne section. If we want a travel product, we walk to the travel section. So it's really about creating products that are specifically for indications, then getting them on shelf, and then obviously building a brand, whether that's through national advertising or consumer traditional advertising, to actually move the products off of the shelf. I'm very partial towards the CBD industry. I think it presents a really nice near-term opportunity to both investors and consumers alike.
Her Highness is both in the CBD and THC industries, and I can say that I think long term that THC is probably where it's at, but I'll also say that for a brand, it's probably, we would make more money in CBD because it's more of a normalized industry. There are so many challenges with THC. We're not a license, we don't have a license, so we partner with companies that have licenses or developing brand, and everyone gets a piece of the pie. And I'm sure you guys have heard lots of news about what's happening in California and how everything's going to black market, because it really is, at this moment, difficult to make a profit in THC. But in the long run, I definitely believe in that. And I'll also, just to Alec's point, psychoactive versus non-psychoactive, we have plenty of THC products that are non-psychoactive. We have a lot of topicals that do not get you high, and it's just a matter of the entourage effect and how you formulate your products.
I agree too that CBD is the real opportunity for the foreseeable future, and the main reason being that any product, including THC, has to be approved, grown, produced, and sold under individual states' regulations. So it's real difficult to scale nationally when you have to comply with dozens of states' rules that are completely different regarding not just the manufacturing, but labeling, how it's sold, et cetera. So people ask me, Jeff, when do you think the THC products will be federally legal, interstate commerce, so to speak? And I say, look, I can't tell you if it's 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, or never. But I think all of us would sort of agree that the CBD world, especially in light of the Farm Bill of 2018 that was signed into law, which allows interstate commerce with a lot of caveats and issues, creates the opportunity and the ability to manufacture and sell CBD products nationally, although there's some challenges ahead.
So that's a good segue, I think, into the regulatory landscape around CBD. We were talking about this before the panel here. Can you just quickly describe what we were talking about with regards to your packaging and the labeling requirements around that, and where CBD really fits into the current FDA scheme?
So, CBD as defined by law and, the ability, as Jeff mentioned, to market and manufacture products, they have to have less than 0.3% THC to comply with the 2018 U.S. Farm Bill. It's a small amount. Many companies such as ours have made the effort to go what we call in the industry tea-free, which is, stripping all of the THC out of products and able to message that to the consumer because, it's a huge concern when, trying a product. A lot of individuals, certainly have never smoked cannabis before, and for their first time in history are just getting comfortable with the opportunity to try a product. And CBD obviously affords a very nice low-hanging fruit and de-risks the barrier to entry into trying one of these products. And then further, when you're talking about a company such as ours, we only manufacture topical products. I would argue that that is an even lower barrier to entry vis-a-vis maybe a vaping product, for example, just because individuals have obviously certain stigmatization associated with that. But what I think Nathan was referring to was, and I want to just take a step back for just a moment to talk about regulations in general in America and describe 3 regulatory pathways that we have in the states in order to bring either drugs or cosmetics, nutraceuticals, dietary supplements to market, because I think it's a very misunderstood pyramid that we have. So it's well understood in the pharmaceutical industry that you have what are called FDA-approved medications. And we are talking about prescription drugs. This is going to take you anywhere from 5 to 10 years to bring a product to market, anywhere from $10 million to upwards of $1 billion in testing, manufacturing, etc. And there's only been one drug that has been brought to market that has any type of cannabinoid, whether it's THC or CBD, and that is called Epidiolex. It's by GW Pharmaceuticals, a company out of the UK, and it's for the specific medical indication of childhood epilepsy. So it's for a very specific number of people and has to be prescribed by a doctor. So that is the most conservative way, the most difficult way to bring a product to market in America as approved medications. Then, on the far liberal side, we have dietary supplements, nutraceuticals, cosmetics. This today in America is a $40 billion industry, and when thinking about this industry, think about your Whole Foods aisle, health and wellness. There's no pre-market or post-market approval for safety or efficacy of these products. So it's as simple as anyone in this room creating a brand, buying some tubes off Alibaba, crushing up some ingredients, sticking it inside, and trying to sell it into the market. That's what you're able to do. Unless a consumer comes back to the FDA with a health concern, then the FDA is probably never going to look at you. The really interesting thing about, and the categorical difference with dietary supplements, is that you cannot make medical claims on these ingredients. And if anyone in the room follows the cannabis industry, a lot of what we've been seeing over the course of the last 12 months are both big and small companies that are making egregious medical claims on their dietary supplements, saying their CBD is going to cure cancer. Their CBD is going to cure pet inflammation. And that is something you cannot do, and that's why they're getting a response from the FDA. Those are 2. In the middle, we have a regulatory environment called OTC. These are over-the-counter drugs, and when you're thinking about this, think about an Advil. This is essentially a regulatory pathway that allows FDA-compliant manufacturing facilities that are using pre-approved ingredients by the FDA, such as ibuprofen, to be marketed as drugs over the counter in retail pharmacy and pharmacy stores in grocery chains. So there's these 3 pathways, and our company leverages that middle pathway, over-the-counter drugs, and uses pre-approved ingredients that have proven therapeutic benefit in association with the CBD to be able to clearly market to the consumer what the product is for. And I brought product with me today because I know it's a little technical and it's much easier to see. So during the break, I'd love to show everyone exactly how this looks.
Great.
Okay. So with our CBD products, we don't put any claims on our products. Our products are market tested with women, and we create products that are helpful for menstrual cramps. We work with herbalists, and we work with formulators, and using cannabis as an ingredient that works with other ingredients is what we're about. And for example, our menstrual cramp relief, it has some peppermint because that's dispersive and that moves around the pain around your body. And as far as regulations, we are staying away from, at the moment, the food and beverages, because I feel like, the FDA, it's such a gray area. The FDA has said that they are going to regulate this. It's not regulated. Our brand is all about helping women, and we're just not getting into this gray area before we should. And something I'll say just about cannabis industry in general is that, we have a lot of products that are in development. We're being very careful about what we release. We're going into them probably lightly so that we don't get into a situation where we have a product that the FDA all of a sudden decides, hasn't been regulated and needs to get off the shelves. And we do that with CBD and THC, but it's just part of being part of this industry. Things change every day, and you've got to be nimble and be able to kind of pivot quickly.
Building somewhat on what Alec and Laura said, the big thing that really happened, let's just talk about what's happened in the last 13 months. And one was that the Farm Bill of 2018 allowed CBD to be produced from industrial hemp. As Alec indicated, that's the cannabis, described as the cannabis plant with less than 0.3% THC. Then what Laura's alluding to on ingestibles, anything that you would eat or drink, beverages, et cetera, is that the FDA then came out with a statement that CBD was not approved as a food or beverage additive. So that really created an issue. There's a lot of agencies involved in this, a lot of the 3 and 4 letter agencies who, all in my position are trying to somewhat look after their own turf between FDA, FTC, USDA, I don't know who I left out, and DEA. But let me take 1 minute and to put this a little bit in posture as to why this is as messed up as it seems. And it comes back to the plant, because ultimately this is all about the plant. And if you look at the cannabis plant 2,000 years ago, it was one variety of plant. And humans inadvertently started breeding this plant for 2 different purposes. Some saw that you could take the fiber, you could put it out in the sun and dry it and weave it into rope or clothing. Other people, even in those days, got a little bit of a high off of it. And so those 2 varieties of the same genetic plant became today what we refer to in the United States as marijuana versus what we call in the United States hemp. In reality, they're both cannabis. So somewhat of an arbitrary definition is, in the United States, industrial hemp, which is what was covered by the 2018 Farm Bill, is described as a cannabis plant with less than 0.3% THC. So that's why we have a bit of a complication here. Now, THC from the marijuana plant comes under state regulatory regimes. CBD from the hemp plant comes under the farm provisions, the Farm Bill and subsequent legislation. So that's why it's a little bit confusing. And when you see local sheriffs in Idaho or Oklahoma seize plants, they really don't know, are we seizing a hemp plant or are we seizing a marijuana plant? Now, the other complication on this, without just trying to give a basis for why the regulations are the way they are, is that ultimately the best source of CBD is not from the industrial hemp plant, because the yields are so low, because that was a plant that was never bred for the flowers where the cannabinoids, including CBD, are. It was bred for height, for fiber. The best sources, quite honestly, are from the marijuana plant, which has been bred in recent history for flowers. So that's what's created this whole regulatory environment.
Much larger than any CBD manufacturing company currently. So, just to Jeff's point, I just wanted to, it's coming, and these companies are coming, and they're coming with large budgets.
I also wanted to add that we're talking about CBD, but with THC, that's not really an issue. And so, some of the more popular products are food and beverages for THC. And we're also looking into doing our own beverages. And I think the whole idea, especially for women, but not just for women, of like this social enjoyment of THC, we lose it a little bit when you compare it to alcohol. And so women love, having a beautiful glass in their hands and sipping that throughout the night. And you just don't get that in the consumption methods right now with THC. And so creating a beverage, we're thinking of doing, and we're working on this, a champagne that's stripped of the alcohol and then infused with THC. And so those types of beverages are being developed and hitting the market right now. There's actually a few companies that are doing it.
I just want to have a quick follow-up to what Laura said. I happen to be a big believer in THC products, so I'm not trying to come out negatively, but as you're a CPG manufacturer, trying to create a THC product, whether it has to be manufactured, processed, and sold within a state, you can't ship it interstate, creates huge challenges in trying to really launch a product nationally, and that's where the problem is today. So you really have to, how many states are THC products? 33 states right now. You have to make it in 33 states, sell it in 33 states, can't ship it across state lines. Huge, if you're trying to get any scale, if you're trying to launch, we're not used to launching products. No CPG company is state-by-state basis with individual lawyers, compliance officers, state by state. The challenges are immense. Now, the big difference is, Laura's products presumably are manufactured here in New York State. They're not where they've been.
California,
They're in California, so she's got the California market.
which is California is half of the United States revenue for THC.
Right. And so California is huge. It's the same reason somebody might want to look at, launching a CPG, CBD product in California. It's a huge market by itself. It's a whole country. It's the fifth biggest economy.
So there's so many things we could talk about this. Frankly, we could probably do a whole day discussion around all these items, but there's a couple things I want to make sure that we address that's specifically relevant to this audience. The first one being the current capital raising environment around both THC and CBD products. So I'll just quickly go down the line. What are you, given the position of your company today, how are you seeing the current capital markets?
So Abacus Health Products, when it started to see some revenue growth in our healthcare practitioner channel, this was mid-2018, we got the advice to run to the capital markets, and thank God we did. We went public February 1st on the Canadian Stock Exchange, the CSE, which also is called the Cannabis Stock Exchange at this point. That's essentially where all the financing in the public markets has been done. And through 2 financing rounds, we raised over $40 million. And again, thank God we did, because the state of the market on the equity side is closed. We hear it from our institutional investors all of the time up in Canada, and there is just really not much ability to raise any money at this point through the public markets because of a lot of the bad actors that have perpetuated throughout the Canadian system, all of the class action lawsuits, the frustrations from the regulatory side, the lack of retail distribution, both on the THC side as well as the CBD side, because a lot of the big box retailers, for example, there's no mass market set yet. We have FD&M, Food, Drug, and Mass in the US. We do not have Target or Walmart even playing in the game yet. So there's such an opportunity, as hopefully you guys can all see right here, both from the investment side and on the consumer side, as I've alluded to. But right now we have about a $21 million cash balance. We have expensive operations as they've scaled, but we're in a very good cash position in order to get EBITDA positive, which we are working towards middle of this year, and just opportunity in front of us.
So Her Highness is a new brand we are just launching, as of a few months ago. And we are in our seed round of funding. So we really have not raised much money. We are a very tight, lean machine. There's not much money to be had at the moment. We're backed by amazing investors, the ones that we have. And And we are just going full force. We're seeing a lot of our peers fall off right now because they are well funded, or they were, and they've blown through the money, and they can't get more money to sustain their business. And so, there will be, once the fallout happens, which is happening, there will be great opportunity, and it's sort of survival of the fittest right now.
And Laura, just to be clear, you're backed by private equity, right? Not just
Yes.
high net worth or family office capital.
Yes, we are. But, not even $1 million. But we're still fundraising.
Let's put it a little bit in perspective what happened on both public and private markets as it relates to the cannabis industry, and that the action was really in Toronto. And why was it in Toronto? Because in November of 2013, Canada put in place regs that kicked in February of 14 that allowed for, throughout all of Canada, a federal regime to legalize cannabis under Health Canada, their socialized medical program. That then created essentially Toronto taking the lead on the cannabis financing capital of the world. And that's what happened. Alec was talking about the Canadian Securities Exchange. I checked about 6 months ago, there were 500 companies queued up that were cannabis related going public up there. So money, most of it from Americans, was funneled through into these Canadian public companies that run the Toronto and Toronto Stock Exchange as well as the CSE. And it was all great. I remember I spoke at a Bloomberg event back in 15, and then a couple Cowen and Company events, early days, and investors in the US couldn't get involved in US cannabis related ventures. I mean, hemp wasn't allowed, CBD wasn't allowed, and obviously THC related products were illegal federally, and the industry was really young. So people were throwing money at deals, there's no other way to say it, and most of that was Americans. And what happened was, I guess, I don't know exactly the timing, but probably starting this summer, companies started getting valued based on actually real metrics, God forbid, like what are your sales, what are your burn rates, what's your cash position, and valuations based on the big public companies came way, way down. And that's like the balloon, air coming out of a balloon as far as access to startups and early stage companies. So now I think, and we were talking about it before, I think going forward what happens is if you look at growing the plant, because again this is ultimately about the plant, if you're growing marijuana on the THC side, it's an agricultural crop ultimately. Now, when ultimately is, I don't know. If you're looking at growing hemp for CBD, it's ultimately an agricultural crop. If you're looking at a processor that's going to process THC products into oils or end products, or on the CBD side, it's a manufacturing operation. If you're looking at retailers, whether it's online retailers or you're trying to get into big box retailers on traditional distribution, which Alec's company has been successful with both, then you're looking at a retail company. And those sub-industries will be valued just like other retailers. How are you doing? What are your profits, your losses, what are your trends? And that's what I see happening. So when people say to me, I'm speaking in Lincoln, Nebraska, to a bunch of farmers on hemp growing a week from Saturday, and it's like the entree thing is, should they grow hemp, is that billions of dollars will be made in these industries. And I consider CBD a different industry from THC. Billions will be made, a greater number of billions will be lost. But these industries are growing up very quickly.
So we know the capital markets of the U.S. and Canada are challenging. Are you seeing investor appetite from other parts of the world? For example, your company has a presence both in the U.S. and in Israel.
Certainly. I think there's investor appetite all over the world. There's certainly less understanding outside of North America. in just terms of market development, less familiarity we see, so we do more education. But certainly when we were, raising money for our offerings, we were attracting investors mainly from Israel, because as you mentioned, we have a 35-person office sitting there, so we're deeply connected with the investor community over there. So there's excitement. I think there's interest. Certainly out of the UK is really coming on board, but there's really just no local market outside of North America at this point. Whether the significant local market. You have countries such as Brazil and Uruguay in Latin America that are liberalizing slowly. Thailand liberalizing slowly, but the majority of the EU is really lagging behind. Just a highly regulated medical society. Traditionally, Australia mimics what the EU does. So it's going to take some time for these international investors to want to play. I think as investors, we like to invest locally, so you can get to know the management teams and keep your eye on the ball and have really an understanding of the local market. So there's that appetite. It's not something that our company has really had to go to, thank God, just because of the local interest that we've been able to generate for our company and our name.
I can just to build on what Alec said for 1 second. The action has been in North America. It started out in Canada, and now the US is obviously a lot bigger market than Canada is. And, Uruguay was the first country that nationally allowed the growing of marijuana THC products nationally. And, it's very complicated, but they're all looking to North America, I think, for the technology, and there's a tremendous opportunity. A lot of the Canadian companies went into like Germany and other countries. Mexico's a great market, but a lot of these countries are corrupt. To try to do something in Brazil or Mexico, good luck. Colombia, I had a guy call me and he said, Jeff, we can sell you all the hemp or CBD you want. Our labor costs are $5 a day. How much do you want? And there was nothing in the 2018 Farm Bill that precluded imports of hemp or CBD. I first bought CBD from Italy in 2014 that was pharma grade. So there's it's a global business, but a lot of these markets are very, very challenging. Thailand is very problematic. Most of Asia will not allow CBD at all because they think it's all cannabis. However, China has stated, and I wrote an article on this about a month ago, China intends to be the world's largest producer of hemp for CBD. They've been a big producer of hemp forever for fiber in southwestern China. So they intend to own the market. So it's going to be very interesting. But right now, the technology, the innovation, our expertise in North America on branding, marketing, and sales is what these other countries are really coming to us for. Alec referenced the EU being problematic, and EU on CBD has, even though you think of the European Union, has basically gone to the individual countries and said, unless I'm wrong, correct me, Alec, make your own rules. So again, the EU, which is I think 26 or 27 countries, could be off, I guess Britain's still sort of in there, so maybe that's why I'm confused, is that you again, just like the United States with 50 states, you're gonna have 26, 27 European countries to be able to get to a market of about 350, 380 million people. So a lot of challenges.
Right, so it sounds like as the industry gets more developed and becomes more mature, and especially as federal regulation, if recreational legalization rolls out across the country, the supply chain will just continue to become more and more commoditized as the industry balances its supply and demand economics. And the place to really differentiate yourself is going to be on the branding and the product side.
Yeah, I think it's ultimately about the cash register ringing. When you talk about, Alec and I were talking about these 2,500 plus CBD brands, most of them have Me Too products. And please take a look at Alec's packaging. I was looking at it before. It's pretty impressive, and he needs to explain it to you. but it's really impressive what he's doing. So the 2,500 companies that are online selling CBD products, most are Me Too. You know, Laura talked about some of her products being very targeted to a women's market. That's great because it's a market niche. Of those 2,500 online sellers of CBD, I don't know if I think Alec and I were talking about it, a year from now, 2,000 of them are going to be out of business. You know, and a lot of that ties to testing requirements and, you know, state requirements and everything else. So it's a great consolidation area. Now, I just want to make one other comment as we talk about the US markets, because there's been a lot of action in integrated operations. Integrated operations means that a lot of the people in this cannabis space have, whether it's on the THC side or CBD side, want to be growers, processors, and, you know, either a dispensary or sell online, depending on THC or CBD. That's not how these CPG products are sold. You know, General Mills are not farmers. They're not processors, they're end product manufacturers. So ultimately, I believe the farmers are going to be farmers, processors are going to be processors, and that people that can get traction on the most important thing, which Nate mentioned, which is selling products, the branding, marketing, and sales are the ones that are going to succeed.
So,
I mean, I just wanted to talk a bit about brands because, you know, with all the CBD products out there, most of them are generic. People are just looking for this, you know, kind of general feel-good product, and you can't really find, for a lot of them, information that backs up. I mean, that's the big problem, is that after testing, a lot of those products don't even have CBD in them, or, you know, they don't have what they're promised to have. And that's a big problem, and we talk about the regulations, but the regulations are a positive thing. You know, we all should know what's going on in our bodies, and the big problem now is that, you know, it's like this snake oil, and we're just trying to get CBD however we can, and that's really not how it should be. By developing a brand and for a specific market, our main mission and goal is to be a trusted resource, especially for women, and, you know, both on THC and CBD side, mostly THC, where they are very curious. We all have, you know, memories of THC and marijuana from when we were younger, and to kind of change that and to make THC really a ingredient that's cannabis, that's beneficial, and to work that into your lives, it really takes trusting a brand, and that's where the brands are coming in. You know, it's not so much about just trying THC or trying CBD, but what's speaking to you. You know, what's in your life that you need it for, and who are you relating to, and that's what we strive to be. And I think that's how it's going to break down, is that people, like in any other normalized industry, will relate to a brand, and they will trust that brand, and that brand is going to take them on that journey. You know, for us, CBD, in many cases, begins that journey of a woman trying cannabis. And, you know, once they're comfortable with CBD, they move on. If they're in a regulated state or have, you know, access to it, they move on to THC, because that's really the benefit. And, you know, Jeff mentioned the CBD. There's CBD in the THC market. And so CBD coming from the plant with more of the THC, it's a different CBD. It's a better CBD because it does more things. It has more, anything that's in the hemp plant, it's just amplified. And so there's a big education that needs to happen there. But in the end, it's all the regulations, the headaches that we've gone through, and even with the vape crisis, which we haven't even touched upon, is all a positive thing, because, and especially women, care what goes into their bodies. And so, I just wanted to say that.
Can I
So, well, we, unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we can talk about this all day. Do we have time for a couple questions?
Richard and Treasure with Ringstar Capital Group. We've spoken about private equity finance and fundraising, but we haven't spoken about what has been your experience in accessing debt finance, specifically the available debt from private equity, hedge funds, and other institutional capital, providing debt against accounts receivable finance, production finance, inventory finance, supply chain financing, cash flow, equipment finance, and ultimately commercial real estate?
So I think it's certainly available. We see it in the industry. There's a lot of sale leasebacks going on with a lot of these licensed producers that have built out huge operations. So that's one type of debt that we've seen. We also see large companies such as Curaleaf. They did a $300 million debt deal, which I think just closed maybe last week, 2 weeks ago. But they're the largest THC manufacturer and licensed producer in America. So there are alternative sources of financing that are available. There's tons of factoring companies. There's companies that are offering us unsecured debt. I get 10 messages on LinkedIn per day, but as I mentioned, our company is in a good cash position. A lot of the other companies are not. I recently heard that up on Bay Street in Toronto, the new stat that the market is tracking is the number of bankruptcies per week, and especially in America, interestingly enough. Well, who's ever gone out of business selling, marijuana before, right? I thought it was supposed to be easy, but the more interesting thing is that because it's federally illegal, a lot of these companies can't go to traditional bankruptcy court, which is, just another interesting dynamic that I don't think we've ever had before. So I think it's open, for debt in a multitude of alternative financing ways, but I don't, I'm not an expert in the subject just because we haven't gone through it yet.
Fortunately, we are out of time. However, all of us will be sticking around for a bit, so you're welcome to come up to us and ask questions. On the commercial real estate side, I can talk to that during the break. So, everyone, thank you very much for your participation.